It sits in the middle of the Atlantic, thousands of kilometers from anywhere, and its name promises something the land itself refuses to deliver. Cape Verde, Green Cape. And yet step onto most of these islands and you find dust, stone, and hillsides where trees can barely take root. So how did a place named for its greenery become one of the driest nations on Earth, and how did the people living there turn that contradiction into one of Africa's most remarkable success stories? Roughly 570 kilometers off the coast of Senegal, 10 volcanic islands rise out of the deep Atlantic in the shape of a horseshoe. Seen from above, they look like the last visible peaks of a sunken world, isolated from every continent by hundreds of kilometers of open ocean. This is also one of the planet's great weather nurseries, a stretch of sea where many of the Atlantic's largest tropical storms are born before they ever reach land. But the strangest thing about this archipelago has nothing to do with volcanoes or hurricanes. It's the name itself. Cabo Verde, in Portuguese, means Green Cape. It's a name that conjures forests, grasslands, rivers running through lush valleys. The truth on the ground is almost the opposite. For most of the year, these islands wear the colors of drought, brown earth, gray stone, pale yellow scrub clinging to slopes where water rarely falls. This wasn't a case of paradise lost to time or climate change stripping away a once green landscape. It was a mistake baked in from the very beginning. Portuguese sailors borrowed the name from Cape Verde, a lush peninsula on the coast of Senegal, the westernmost point of mainland Africa, and carried that name across the water to islands that shared almost nothing with it geographically. In reality, Cape Verde isn't a tropical paradise at all. It's an oceanic extension of the Sahel, the same harsh semi-desert belt that stretches across northern Africa. Winds routinely carry Saharan dust straight across the sea, coating the islands in a faint brown haze. Only about 1/10 of the land can sustain long-term farming. Freshwater has never been guaranteed here, and for centuries, drought hasn't been an occasional crisis. It's been a constant companion. And here's what makes that hardship even more remarkable. Before the 15th century, nobody lived on these islands at all. No indigenous population, no ancient civilization, nothing. Cape Verde is one of the rare places on the planet where human history didn't stretch back thousands of years into prehistory. It started, quite precisely, with the arrival of Europeans. So if there was no one here to begin with, where did an entire nation, an entire culture, an entire identity come from? The answer starts in a quiet valley on the southern coast of Santiago Island, in a town now called Cidade Velha. Today it's little more than stone-paved streets and low houses beside a dry riverbed, the kind of place a traveler might pass through without a second glance. But more than 5 centuries ago, this was one of the most consequential places in the entire Atlantic world. In 1462, Portuguese settlers founded Ribeira Grande here, the first permanent European city ever built in the tropics. Its location put it directly on the emerging trade routes of the Age of Exploration, a natural stopover where ships crossing between Europe, Africa, and the Americas could take on water, restock supplies, and make repairs before the long ocean crossing ahead. But ships weren't the only thing passing through. Throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, Ribeira Grande became one of the major transit hubs of the transatlantic slave trade. Men and women taken from across the West African coast were funneled through this small valley before being forced across the ocean toward the Americas. Goods, languages, beliefs, and lives all collided here, carried on the same currents. What emerged from that collision wasn't just tragedy, it was something entirely new. The Portuguese brought their language, their religion, their customs. West Africans, forcibly displaced from their homelands, brought memory, music, and survival knowledge passed down through generations. On islands with no prior culture of their own to displace, these two worlds didn't just coexist, they merged. Out of that merging came Crioulo, a language that was never fully Portuguese and never fully West African, but something built from scratch by generations, adapting to a new reality in the middle of the sea. Alongside it, a mestizo society took shape, one that belonged to neither continent but to the ocean between them. It was here, in this small valley now half forgotten by the modern world, that the foundation of Cape Verdean identity was laid, stone by stone, generation by generation. The 19th century brought a reckoning. As the transatlantic slave trade declined, the ports that had depended on it for their economic lifeblood withered. Prolonged droughts triggered devastating famines, pushing waves of Cape Verdeans to migrate toward the United States and other Portuguese colonies just to survive. Out of that suffering, something else began to grow, a desire for self-determination. Amilcar Cabral emerged as the leading voice of that movement, pushing for unity and independence between Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau. On the 5th of July, 1975, after more than 5 centuries under colonial rule, Cape Verde finally became its own nation, free to shape its future on its own terms. But independence didn't erase the geography. 10 islands still sit scattered across the Atlantic, and locals have long grouped them according to the winds that shape them. To the north, the Barlavento Islands, the Windward Group. To the south, the Sotavento Islands, more sheltered from the ocean's force. Each island tells a completely different story. Sal, in the north, looks from above like a strip of honey-colored land drifting in deep blue water, its dryness almost total. Yet that same harshness created something valuable. Ancient salt pans formed by volcanic activity and centuries of seawater evaporation, still glinting white under the sun today. Farther east, Boa Vista, whose name means beautiful view, stretches into endless beaches and shifting dunes carried by winds that drag Saharan dust across the sea, making visitors feel less like they have landed on a tropical island and more like they have walked into a desert that happens to be surrounded by ocean. Fogo tells a completely different kind of story. At its center rises Pico do Fogo, a volcano nearly 2,829 meters tall and the highest point in the entire country, standing like a black pyramid against the horizon. It's still active. Eruptions have reshaped the island's landscape repeatedly, and yet people keep coming back, rebuilding their homes on the same fertile volcanic soil, growing vineyards and coffee plantations inside the wide caldera, surrounded by seas of black rock. Why would anyone keep returning to a mountain that keeps trying to erase them? Because on Fogo, the same violence that destroys is the same force that makes the ground worth farming in the first place. Santiago, the largest island, holds the country's political center in Praia, a capital city with a rhythm unlike the quiet of the smaller islands, government buildings, universities, a working port, the pulse of a nation still moving forward. And yet even here, the past refuses to stay buried, with Cidade Velha's ancient stone streets sitting only a short drive from the modern capital. If Santiago is where the country governs itself, São Vicente is where it feels itself. In Mindelo, cafes and open-air stages carry the sound of Morna late into the night, a music so emotionally loaded that Cape Verdeans have a word for exactly what it captures, saudade, a longing that might be homesickness, might be grief for someone who left, or might simply be the ache of reaching for something no longer within reach. Then, there's Santo Antão, the island that seems to contradict everything visitors expect from Cape Verde. Instead of dust and drought, deep green valleys. Instead of flat coastline, cliffs plunging straight into the ocean and roads carved impossibly into the mountainside. Moisture carried by sea winds allows vegetation here to flourish in a way that feels almost like a rebellion against the rest of the archipelago. And scattered among the remaining islands are quieter stories still. São Nicoláu's colorful villages tucked into rugged terrain. Brava's mild climate earning it the nickname the Island of Flowers. Maio's untouched beaches moving at a pace that feels disconnected from the modern world entirely. And Santa Luzia, wild and uninhabited, the one island in the chain no one has ever permanently called home. If the land tells one story, the music tells another, and it might be the truer one. When night falls over Mindelo or Praia, music becomes the language that connects every generation at once. Morna remains the most distinctive sound of the islands, slow, aching melodies built around that same feeling of saudade, a nation's memory of centuries of departure. Hundreds of thousands of Cape Verdeans left these islands looking for opportunity elsewhere. And today, the Cape Verdean population living abroad is actually larger than the population still living on the islands themselves. Separation isn't an abstract idea here. It's a lived generational reality, and no one carried that reality to the world more powerfully than Cesária Évora, the woman from Mindelo who performed barefoot and unadorned, her voice carrying the weight of the harbor in every departure it had ever witnessed. But Cape Verde isn't only mourning and longing. Beneath Morna's slow ache runs something faster, Funa Na, where the accordion drives forward with urgency and the dancing turns fierce and alive. Older still is Batuk, rooted directly in West African heritage, built from handclaps, percussion, and call and response singing that turns performance into shared community. And across the islands, one phrase keeps showing up on t-shirts, cafe walls, and in casual conversation. No stress. It sounds like a slogan, but it's really a philosophy forged by necessity. For centuries, Cape Verdeans couldn't control the drought, the isolation, the distance from the rest of the world. The only thing within their control was how they responded to it. Don't rush. Don't complain more than necessary. Don't let what you can't control take the joy out of what you can. That same philosophy shows up in Morabeza, often translated simply as hospitality, but really meaning something closer to warmth, openness, the deliberate effort to make a stranger feel like they belong. And it shows up on the table too, in cachupa, the national dish, a slow-cooked stew built from corn, beans, vegetables, and whatever else happens to be available that week. A meal that turns scarcity itself into something communal. So what does a nation with no ancient history, born from hardship, drought, and displacement, actually look like today? Cape Verde is now consistently ranked among the most stable democracies on the entire African continent, with peaceful transfers of power and steadily strengthening institutions. Literacy rates sit among the highest in the region, the product of decades of sustained investment in education. In 2024, the country reached a milestone few African nations have achieved, being officially certified malaria-free. Its national football team qualified for the 2026 World Cup for the first time in its history, a moment that mattered less for the scoreline and more for what it represented. A small island nation standing shoulder to shoulder with the biggest names in the sport. And the very forces that once seemed like permanent obstacles, relentless sun, unbroken Atlantic wind, are now being converted into the country's future, with plans to push renewable energy toward roughly half of the nation's electricity needs by 2030. Even the diaspora, that vast population living far from home, remains part of the machine keeping the islands running, sending remittances back that do more than support the economy. They keep an invisible thread connecting these islands to every corner of the world their people scattered into. Cape Verde proves something worth sitting with. A nation's identity doesn't have to be inherited from thousands of years of unbroken history. Sometimes it has to be built from nothing, out of hardship, migration, and the sheer will to keep going. From the old stone walls of Cidade Velha to the green valleys of Santo Antão, from the aching pull of Morna to the winds that never stop crossing the Atlantic, it all points to the same conclusion. A green cape, not because of what grows from its soil, but because of what its people managed to grow out of almost nothing at all. What do you think it says about a nation that its culture was built entirely from arrival and departure, rather than deep roots in one place? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like this one.